As a content warning, in this painting I explore internalized homophobia, racism, the body, and religion. As a painter, my visual unskillment can be understood as seeing patterns and making connections. Since anyone can paint without particular training or specialization, this unskillment has to do primarily with looking at paintings, artworks, and other literature that can inform what you paint. I paint the way I learn, and as such, it is a skilled vision. It's a hegemonic vision emerging out of the learning process that maintains their qualities of social, affective, and cognitive engagement, of sensuousness, and of creativity. I usually start a painting by visualizing a concept of what I want to depict and drawing on a few sources of inspiration. For this painting, I knew I wanted to do a self-portrait focusing on themes of internalization and externalization, using respiration as a metaphor for the way individuals experience and interact with their environment. To start, I took inspiration from the album cover and music of Quasimoto's Yessir Whatever, Jane statues, the self-portraiture of Frida Kahlo, and the works of Jean-Michel Basquiat. In Self-Portrait on the Borderline between Mexico and the United States, Frida Kahlo represents herself standing between the United States and her homeland of Mexico. The painting uses a variety of methods to represent the connection between the internal and the external. I was inspired by the ways in which she conveys her material conditions impacting her identity and self-image. In this self-portrait, she is representing herself confronting colonialism, heritage, and resistance. In Jain artwork, such as the statue of Jain Parshvanatha from the 6th century, methods of depicting the human form carry religious and spiritual significance. Often depicted standing, life-size, and minimally clothed, these statues make the viewer consider the humanity of the figure presented. Jainism is closely related to Buddhism and places an emphasis on the rejection of material possessions, meditation, and the relationship of individuals to the cosmos and the evolution of the universe. The human body is the site for exploration of spirituality and one's place within the universe. The cover of Yessir Whatever shows Quasimoto in a cartoonish X-ray as what makes up the character. I wanted to use this visual motif to show what makes up me. This is also deeply related to Jean-Michel Basquiat, who often showed himself and others anatomically. Basquiat used anatomy to deconstruct race, the human condition, and identity. Both in Basquiat's work and hip-hop, like Madlib's Quasimoto, the sample is foundational. In hip-hop, a sample is a piece of music or loop, which is appropriated, sometimes modified, and put into a new context. Madlib, Quasimoto's alter ego and creator, is known for his heavy and creative use of samples. Basquiat would take symbols, words, and images from disparate sources and combine them in a kind of visual concrete poetry. Learning how Basquiat placed himself in conversation with art history, his lived experience, and systems through his painting has really influenced my visual unskillment. In my painting, samples, citations, and references form the basis of how I see connections. As I start painting, I lay out the basic size and shape of the figure, emphasizing the internal organs of the stomach, intestines, and the lungs. I then add a skull, a recurring visual motif in much painting, but especially Basquiat's work. In the lungs, I adhere some advertisements from a newspaper, emphasizing how one internalizes the things they consume, like air during an inhale. From here, I continue to make connections to the things I have marked down, the inspirations I've set out with, and things I am researching as I paint. Through this constant revision, addition, and elaboration, I can express thoughts or follow a train of thought. First, I revised the skull to be evocative of Van Gogh's Skull with a Cigarette and more anatomically correct. Around the skull, I add a series of triangles sampled from a record. I begin to layer bone, muscle, and skin around the figure, building them from the inside out. In my stomach, I start combining symbols of things I may have literally consumed, such as soup or marijuana, with things I have consumed in other ways, like television. Next, I finish sketching the proportions of the figure and begin to surround them with external images. Occult, esoteric, and psychoanalytical signs are sampled and juxtaposed to begin sketching the logic of the painting. Notably, a few symbols and motifs are taken from tarot decks. The infinity above the figure's head is from the Rider-Waite Magician card, and the drawing next to the knee is from the same card from the Enchanted Tarot deck. Here, I make connections between the act of self-portraiture and traditional conceptions of the magician and the alchemist. Magic and alchemy, in the esoteric sense, are the arts of changing the material world using the mind. Similarly, an artist has the power to represent their world using their mind. Here, I begin to visualize some of the aspects of my identity, beliefs about the world, and thought processes. I begin connecting the construction of this self-portrait to naturalist and Marxist notions of socialization and identity formation. I begin to expand on the ways exterior systems such as capitalism, colonialism, and heteronormativity have influenced me. The symbols in my stomach representing things I have internalized. Some symbols of personal significance are obscured from decoding, while others speak more clearly to internalized homophobia, addiction, and radical politics. More recognizable symbols, like the no-smoking symbol, the Egyptian Ankh, or the swastika, are taken from books, the internet, or everyday life. As my unconscious thoughts are expressed through these motifs, logic, and theories, I can begin to coagulate and tie together disparate trains of thought. While waiting for paint to dry and my thoughts to collect, I make notes to myself on things I can reference or sample while I'm going about my life. Things from my notebooks may be reused in the painting, such as this mandala drawn by psychoanalyst Carl Jung. Other things are clarified, like the label added above the right shoulder of the figure, labeling it with the mediator, Quasimoto Deum, meaning the only god in Latin and ancient Sumerian. Some things are revised entirely. The eye above the figure's right hand becomes the Helix Nebula, sometimes known as the Eye of God. Direct reference to texts, including excerpts from Selma James's Sex, Race, and Class, are included. In James's passages, she discusses the intersection of sex, class, and race, and children as a site for the reproduction of labor. They act as a citation to the intersectional view of identity and class that I'm wrestling with. Other references, such as the Kabbalah between the figure's legs and the flesh-colored pentagram, are more open to interpretation. The paintbrush in the hand, a recognizable motif of self-portraiture, clarifies the subject of the painting. I can tell when the painting is finished, as I can see connections, systems, and influences I am managing visually represented. My paintings are a record of my learning, and as such they are both products of visual enskillment and tools of visual enskillment. Just like I have learned from paintings, someone else could look at this and learn how I see. The power of paintings, to me, is in this infectious chain of learning and growing.